Egypt, masters of transforming the fundamental vibration of the planet into energy, resonating, concentrating the telluric forces, and boosting man's thinking. A life well-traveled cannot be considered complete without at least one visit to Egypt, as one of the oldest, greatest, and best preserved World Heritage Sites on Earth. Sakara quantum machine, or the step pyramid, was entered for the first time in 1821 by Heinrich von Minottoli. He was excavated from 1924 to 1935 by the architect Jean-Philippe Lauer. Is accessed via colonnade entrance near its southeastern corner. This long hall is flanked by stone columns in the shapes of bundles of papyrus or palm branches. These are engaged columns. Instead of being freestanding, each column is supported by a wall that is connected with the wall of the colonnade. At either end of the colonnade entrance is a non-functional imitation door that is made out of stone. Sakara Step Pyramid, or the Quantum Machine. This work was led by the brilliant architect Imhotep, who held titles such as Advisor to the King of Lower Egypt, the first after the King of Upper Egypt, Administrator of the Great Palace, Prince and Grand Visionary of Heliopolis. Imhotep was deified in ancient Egypt and was a patron of scribes. The Greeks identify him as Asclepius, the god of medicine. This work was not built all at once, but in stages, reaching its current form of 6 mastabas, measuring 60 meters in height. The base of the pyramid is about 121 meters by 109 meters. The inside chamber lies at the bottom of a shaft in the center of this machine. At a depth of 28 meters, there are several levels underneath the pyramid at depth up to 40 meters, where over 30,000 jars made of solid stone were found, the most important of which are made of granite. Inscriptions of King Djoser at the celebration of the Hatshepsut festival can also be found on the bottom. Continuing the journey through Cairo city, we could have a glimpse of how the Nile is around the city these days. And then we get to the Giza Plateau, right in downtown Cairo. We can see here how the layout remains there and the structure stands still, tall and strong after thousands of years, reaching up the sky, mind-blowing us with its beauty, with its size. We can see Cairo on the background of the Giza Plateau, the entire city on the other side of the Nile River. Here we stand and we experience the magnificent energy this machine, this power plant, is vibrating. It's still alive, it's still working. That's the Grand Gallery. We can see how busy it is, how much you have to bend to be able to reach the King's Chamber right there, which is the center of this power plant. We can see there at the very end of the king's chamber here, the big energy battery. And so it is to get in, it is to get out. It's very busy. We can see this very alien structure design, megalithic stone blocks like overlaying each other. The atmosphere and the temperature there is very hot due to the amount of people. Once inside the king's chamber, the vibration is healing, is perfect. We can see here the great Sphinx. Also there, defying time and space after thousands of years, standing there, strong and beautiful, facing east. Continuing through Cairo, we are able to reach the great sleeping train, because we are going to Aswan here to be able to visit the beautiful Philae Temple, the Temple of Isis, right there. The great Temple of Isis. The island of Philae was the main cult center of one of the most significant figures of ancient Egyptian pantheon, Isis, and as such, great temple is the most important and prominent landmark of Philae. The temple is entered through a monumental gateway called a pylon, constructed by Ptolemy XIII, who can be seen in its outer face about to strike Egypt's enemies in a symbolic scene protected of both Egypt and the temple. And a second doorway on the western side of the pylon leads into the birthhouse. And on the eastern side is the so-called Gate of Philadelphus. The chamber far end of the temple was the sanctuary, where the sacred image of the goddess Isis was kept. This unfinished monument is attributed to Trajan, the Roman emperor, called the Pharaoh's Bed, due to his depiction as pharaoh seen in some of the interior reliefs. However, the majority of the structure dates on an earlier time, possibly to the reign of Augustus. Its function was likely to shelter the bark of Isis at the eastern banks on Philae Island, similar to the birthhouses of Philae, Armand, and Dendera, though this decoration was never completed. Nevertheless, the experience that you can go through when you visit this temple and enter its chambers, it's one of the greatest feminine, creative, life-giving, sweet, tender, and divine type of frequency embodied in its foundations. The temple and island would have disappeared entirely if UNESCO didn't save it from 1972 to 1980. They literally held back the flood waters created by the newly constructed Aswan High Dam. They reclaimed the site from the mud, disassembled it stone by stone, and relocated it to the nearby Agilika Island. You can only access through water. The Temple of Isis is now in this Agilika Island, though most of the people still just refer it to as Philae. Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel is the site of the two temples built by the Egyptian king Ramses II. They are now located in Aswan. In ancient times, the area was at the southern frontier of pharaonic Egypt, facing Nubia. The four colossal statues of Ramses in front of the main temple, watching over the incoming traffic from the south, designed as a warning of the strength of the pharaoh, and are spectacular examples of ancient Egyptian art. Originally carved out of a sandstone cliff on the west bank of the Nile between 1274 and 1244 BC, this imposing main temple of the Abu Simbel complex was as much dedicated to the deified Ramses II himself as to Ra, Amun, and Ta. These temples were unknown to the outside world until they were rediscovered in 1813. These 20-meter seer figures of Ramses are set against the recessed face of the cliff, two on either side of the entrance of the main temple. Carved around their feet are small figures representing Ramses' children, his queen Nefertiti, and his mother Mutui. The temple itself is dedicated to the sun god Amon-Ra, as well as decorated with Osiris statues of the king and with painted scenarios of his victory at the Battle of Kadesh. We can see here he is about to strike his enemies with the protection of the goddess Nekhbet and the god Horus. On 2 days of the year, the first ray of the morning sun penetrates the whole length of the temple and illuminates the shrine in its innermost sanctuary. As we walk through this long room, we can see different depictions of the pharaoh offering different foods and goods to the different primordial gods of Egypt, sharing with us how essential it is to keep offering ourselves to the primordial powers of existence, to go and say thank you, to go to those forces, the gods, and offer them back for what they have given us, for their protection and their blessings. The roof of the large hall is decorated with vultures, symbolizing the protective goddess Nekhbet, and it's supported by 8 columns, each fronted by Osiris statues of Ramses II. By means of a complex engineering feat in the 1960s, the temples were rescued from the rising waters of the Nile River caused by the creation of the Aswan High Dam. Just to the north of the main temple is a smaller one dedicated to Nefertiti for the worship of the goddess Hathor, and adorned with 10.5-meter statues of the king and the queen. The Temple of Hathor and Nefertiti, also known as the Small Temple, was built about 100 meters northeast of the Temple of the Pharaoh and was dedicated to the goddess Hathor and his consort, Nefertiti, as a deified queen. The capitals of the pillars bear the face of the goddess Hathor, but are decorated with the queen playing the sistrum, an instrument sacred to the goddess Hathor. On the south and the north walls there are 2 graceful and poetic reliefs of the king and the queen presenting papyrus plants to Hathor. The small sanctuary which lies to the west along the axis of the temple, there is a niche in which Hathor, as a divine cow, seems to be coming out of the mountain. The goddess is depicted as the mistress of the temple, dedicated to her and to the queen Nefertiti, who is deeply connected to the goddesses. Continuing our journey, we took the boat along the Nile River. We went through beautiful landscapes, beautiful weather, very welcoming breeze, other people sailing the Nile, beautiful landscapes on the side, the waters are fresh and clean in many areas of the Nile River, as this one where we stopped, first of all, to enjoy, to witness the beautiful full moon rising from the east at the Nile. We stay overnight there, swim, got ready in the early morning with some people just waking up and welcoming a new day towards our new destination. Kom Ombo Temple, the Temple of Duality. It is dedicated to two deities, the crocodile god Sobek and the falcon god Horus the Elder. This temple has a unique design. It has two parallel passages running through its column halls, terminating in two sanctuaries at the very end, one for each, which by the way are facing 7 chambers at the very edge of the temple. So the south axis is Sobek's, who was a god of fertility associated with water, the inundation and vegetation, and he was worshipped here alongside his wife Tasenet not Fred, which means the perfect companion, and their son Panetawi, the lord of the two lands. The northern axis belonged to Horus, the son of Osiris and Isis. He was worshipped here alongside his wife Hathor and their son, the moon god Khonsu. We can see here how important was throughout Egypt the offerings. And we can see here a depiction of ancient technology. Those are clinical, medical tools they used in those times. Alongside with the knowledge of the spiral, as we can see in this nilometer still in use. Inner halls and twin sanctuaries. The ceiling of one of the passages has survived with much of its decoration and original colors. Stars against the blue sky can be seen, as can a pattern of vultures wearing the white crown, alternating with cobra-headed vultures wearing the red crown. These respectively represents the Upper Egyptian and the Lower Egyptian goddesses Nekhbet and Wajet. At the far end of the temple lie its two most sacred rooms, the sanctuaries. The southern is dedicated to Sobek and the other to Horus. In the center of each is a fragment of black granite. Secret rooms are located throughout the temple in the spaces within their known disappeared walls, where ritual equipment was once stored. Edfu. This temple is one of the best preserved ancient monuments in Egypt. The court of offerings is surrounded of 3 sides by 32 columns, each side with different floral capitals. It is guarded by 2 huge, splendid granite statues of Horus as a falcon. Preserved by desert sand, which filled the place after the pagan cult was banned, the temple is dedicated to Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris. With its roof intact, it is also one of the most atmospheric of ancient buildings. The outer hall itself has 12 columns. The inner hall has also 12 columns. The second antechamber gives access to the sanctuary of Horus, right here, which contained the polished granite shrine that once housed the gold cult statue of Horus. The temple itself is the very core of hieroglyphs, and it's the treasure trove of Egypt's ancient language as its walls are covered in ancient Egyptian writings. These writings are said to document everything from the creation of the temple, of wars, language, and linguistic guides of the hieroglyphs itself. And the most notorious feature of the Edfu Temple is the inner walls of the peristyle hall. These massive walls are covered in hieroglyphs from the top to the very bottom without an inch of space in between. Standing in front of it makes it impossible to believe that mere humans could have carved so many and so very complicated symbols in such a laser-sharp precisions on every possible gap, and none of these hieroglyphs seems to have faded with time. On the west side, 242 steps lead up to the rooftop and its fantastic views of the Nile and the surrounding fields. In the carvings on the walls, we can see offerings and praisings to the gods and Horus for defeating Sobek. However, the roof is closed to visitors. In the Temple of Edfu, there are two stairwells, one going straight down and the other one spiraling upward, dedicated to the victory of the god Horus over the evil crocodile god Sobek. It is said that Horus would fly up the spiral stairs and into the sky to heal himself, and dive back down through the other stairwell. The modern town of Luxor is the site of the famous city of Tebas, the city of the 100 gates. This temple was built by Amenhotep but completed by Tutankhamun and then added by Ramses II. Although the mud brick houses and palaces of Tebas have disappeared, its stone temples have survived. The most beautiful of this is the Temple of Luxor. It is close to the Nile and lay out parallel to the riverbank. The court leads to a hall which has 32 columns. At the rear of the hall are 4 small rooms and an antechamber leading to the birth room, the chapel of Alexander the Great, and the sanctuary, where we can see depictions, representation of their very advanced technology and high knowledge they possessed during their civilization. Here we can see the sperm, which in these modern times were not rediscovered again until almost 400 years ago. Luxor Temple, called the Southern Sanctuary, was so called because of its location with ancient Tebas, which is now Luxor. It is located around 3 kilometers to the south of Karnak Temple, to which it was once linked with a processional way bordered with sphinxes. It's time to go to the desert land and find the beauties that has been uncovered in the middle of nowhere with only a few houses on the road, like the great temple of Hatshepsut. She was the female king of Egypt. Like other pharaohs, she was a child of a king. Unlike the others, she was a woman who attained unprecedented power for a woman, adopting the full titles. Hatshepsut, the elder daughter of the king Thutmose I, was married to her half-brother Thutmose II. Considered one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, Hatshepsut brought great wealth and artistry to her land. She sponsored one of Egypt's most successful trading expeditions, bringing back gold, ebony, and incense. She secured her legacy by building structures that still stand today. She added 200-foot tall obelisk at the great temple complex of Karnak. Hatshepsut was usually carved or drawn as a man, complete with muscles and a beard, as was the artistic tradition for pharaohs. But historians knew the truth. She always made sure the art included a reference to being a woman, such as the daughter of Ra or His Majesty herself. When she died, Egypt would not see as powerful a female ruler for another 1,400 years when Cleopatra came to the throne. A World Heritage Site, the Valley of the Kings. The longest tomb belongs to the Queen Hatshepsut, whose burial chamber is nearly 215 meters from the entrance and descends 100 meters into the mother rock. The plan of the tombs consists essentially of a descending corridor with deep shafts and chambers. At the farther end of the corridor is a burial chamber with a massive stone sarcophagus in which the royal mummy was laid, and store chambers around which furniture and equipment for the king's use in the next life. The tomb of Seti I. It was discovered by Giovanni Velsoni in 1817. The quality of painted relief decorations, deep tunnel descending from floor of burial chamber, vaulted ceiling of burial chamber, first appearance of expanded litany of Ra, decorations of all chambers. In all the decorations we can see the Book of the Gates, King with Gods, the opening of the mouth ritual, astronomical scenes, the Book of the Heavenly Cow, and the Litany of Ra. The 137 meters long tomb was completely decorated, and beautiful preserved art from Seti's reign is among the finest in Egypt. It consists of a total of 7 corridors and 10 chambers, and it's also the first tomb that possessed a burial chamber with a vaulted ceiling depicting a very complete description of constellations and polar stars. It is also the first tomb to be decorated with a complete program of religious texts like the Litany of Ra. He ruled some 70 years after the death of Tutankhamun, after the chaos of Akhenaton years at Tel al-Amarna. Seti's one reign was a golden age that saw a revival of the Old Kingdom style art, best seen at his temple in Abydos and here in this tomb. Tomb of Ramses I. It was discovered by Giovanni Velsoni in 1817. In the decorations we see the King with the Gods and the Book of Gates. Ramses I is one of the least appreciated because he was not born into a royal family but one of the most important kings. His rule and descendants would shape ancient Egypt for generations. The entryway to the tomb is framed by Ma'at, who divides the story on the walls, and the burial chamber comes immediately after the second corridor. The tomb is decorated with scenes from the Book of the Gates, describing the journey of the sun god through the 12 gates of the netherworld. He was protected by a great snake surrounding him and accompanied by 2 gods, knowledge and magic. In the final scene, the king stands before the god Khepri, represented as a man with the beetle in place of his head. The king brings offerings of ointment and 4 caskets of clothes for his new life. The tomb of Ramses V and VI has been open since antiquity. One started the constructions and later on the other finished the excavation of the tomb. It is not known whether the 2 kings share the tomb. The tomb as a whole is decorated with a wide variety of texts and scenes. In the decorations, we find the books of gates, the book of the day and the book of the night, the book of the earth, the book of the caverns, and the book of the dead. Is without a doubt one of the most inspiring, elevated ways of expressing art and knowledge. Tutankhamun tomb. Upon Tutankhamun's death at the age of 19, a tomb was hastily adapted for his burial. Only the burial chamber was painted, depicting scenes of his journey into the afterlife. Now, over 3,300 years old, the paintings have remarkably little loss, and the original colors are still vibrant. Conservation has helped to understand the condition of the wall paintings and preserve them, although they are still at risk from damage. Visitors change the tomb environment, bringing in dust and causing humidity and carbon dioxide levels to increase. For preservation, visitor numbers are restricted, and filter ventilation system improves air quality. Today, only the mummy of the king, the outermost of the three nested coffins, and the stone sarcophagus and its lid remains in the tomb. The other objects found in the tomb upon its discovery in 1922 were removed to Cairo. The tomb of Seti II. It's peacefully executed upon the plaster walls of the next corridors. The painting have never been finished. The tomb comes to an abrupt end a short distance further on when the king died. And that's how we leave the desert land, the Valley of the King, to head towards the great center of Karnak. Karnak, the Temple of Consciousness, a World Heritage Site and the largest temple complex in Egypt and in the world. The great metropolitan temple of the state god Amun-Ra is considered to be where that god lived on earth with his wife Mut and son Khonsu. The complex is dominated by the great temple of Amun-Ra, which is famous for this hall, this spectacular forest of gigantic papyrus-shaped columns. The main structure is surrounded by the houses of Amun's wife Mut and their son Khonsu. Two other huge temples are on the site. Karnak was the most important place of worship in Egypt during the New Kingdom. This hall, 16 meters high, featuring 134 columns, is still the largest room of any religion building in the world. On its southern side, the Mut Temple enclosure was once linked to the main temple by an avenue of ram-headed sphinxes. And to the north, we have the Montu Temple, which is dedicated to the war god. The Egyptians believed that towards the end of the annual agriculture cycle, the gods and the earth became exhausted and require a fresh input of energy from the cosmos. And so, as part of Hatshepsut's master plan for posterity, she commissioned 2 pairs of pink granite obelisks at Karnak Temple. Almost 33 meters high, these ones are the tallest still standing anywhere in Egypt. As a tribute to her father, to the one who made me, she says. Not the biological natural one, but to Amun, the king of the gods, to whom this whole temple is dedicated. In addition to the main sanctuary, there are several smaller temples and a vast sacred lake, 129 by 77 meters, also still working nowadays. The 3 kilometers paved avenue of human-headed sphinxes that once linked the great Temple of Amun at Karnak with Luxor Temple is now again being cleared. The work of repairing and strengthening goes on continuously, and as this work is carried out, new discoveries are being made. So stay in tune with the magics and wonders of ancient Egypt.